Hi guys, Andrew here, and welcome to Andrew's Art Duchy. Today I'm super excited to be doing my first drawing tutorial, and it's actually an illustration commission for my author friend Wade Llewellyn. Now, I don't do many commissions these days, but Wade is somebody who I worked with in the past, so there's a certain sense of loyalty there, and I want his books to kind of have a cohesion as he releases novels over the years. So I did agree to take this one on, and it's actually going to be a fantasy castle, which I'm excited about because most of my work tends to sort of be these grand architectural pieces. It's what I'm just naturally drawn to. So in this video, I want to show you my approach to concepting out the piece, sketching things together, and eventually arriving at a final line drawing. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, before I start on the actual illustration, I'm going to collect a group of reference images. These will serve as inspiration to me, and I'll keep them up throughout the entire drawing process. The author wants this particular castle to reference the grand French chateaus and palaces. Its unique signifying feature will be 7 towers, and they're going to have quite a few different balconies. They kind of look like polypore mushrooms that are growing from the side of a tree. Alright, so now that I've got that, I'm going to hop in on a new file and a new layer and lay down my horizon line. Now, this is going to be the most important line I draw in this entire image, but more on that in a second. To help me with the composition and alignment of the piece, I'm going to throw in some additional vertical and horizontal lines, as well as an X to indicate the center point of the image. I'll then reduce the opacity of this layer before starting a new one, and going in outlining the rough base of the castle. It's at this point that I really have to just start committing to different kinds of shapes. It's very experimental, and this is where the horizon line that I mentioned earlier comes in handy. See, the horizon line represents your eye level, and all objects must obey certain laws of perspective in relation to it. So if one of my castle towers is below the horizon line, that means I'm looking down on it, and if it's above the line, I'm always going to be looking up at it. What this knowledge allows me to do is then make the image look more three-dimensional. For instance, say you were a bird up in the sky looking down at these towers. This is what you would see. Each one's going to decrease in size. In this case, since they're all the same, they will all meet up at a focal point on the horizon, and they're going to start to flatten out due to the curvature of the Earth. They are actually curving with it, and the horizon line is just that, where the Earth dips away completely from your view. As humans, we tend to see this most often when we're looking out into the vast ocean, or if we're high up in a building unobstructed by other buildings or mountains. Now say you have a really tall tower and the roof is above and the base is below. The lines will curve also depending on their placement in relation to the horizon. And it's handy for knowing how to draw the windows on the object. So that was my broken down, oversimplified attempt at explaining perspective. There are a lot of books and videos out there that do a much better job. But what you're after here is really just a basic understanding. That alone will help your images look a lot more realistic. So here I'm just kind of winging it. I've drawn a cylindrical tower, sort of set apart by this arched walkway from the main structure. Now I'm going to draw a tower that's a little bit influenced by this reference image, which this is a tower, and inside of it, as you can see by the curved railings, there's a spiral staircase going up it. So I'm going to reference the image and try and mimic the shape in my piece. I also think it would be cool to draw upon this curvy mushroom effect that we've got going on and put it into the tops of my towers. Do a little more. Cap off the tower with a small dome. And here I'm going to speed up time for the purposes of the video. I wanted to do a little winding path up to the main entrance. One of the things you'll notice on a design note is, as I'm drawing the towers, they appear similar, but they're not, copies of each other. They're more like siblings. They share characteristics, but each one is unique in its own right. I'm running out of room here, but the castle does need to have 7 towers, so the last 2 will just be accent pieces. They're very narrow and a bit impractical, but they're there to really reinforce the conceptual notion that the towers are just kind of sprouting forth balconies, like a tree covered in mushrooms. Adding almost decorative elements like this that really emphasize certain shapes is a great way for an artist to bring cohesion to an image. To bring more of the French provincial style into the piece, I'll borrow the window pattern from this chateau reference. It's got a lot of windows on the roof jutting out. Now those are called dormers, so I want to incorporate some of those into the castle. Now you'll notice I zoom in and out a lot. I hope it's not making you too dizzy, but this is just something I do and I've picked up over the years. It helps me make sure everything's working together as a single structure and keeps me from getting bogged down in one area. So here I have the rough outline for the castle, and I'm pretty happy with it, but I'm right-handed and I suspect that the whole thing is leaning a little to the right. So I'm going to flip the canvas just to make sure. Yep, sure enough, it's all leaning a bit. This is a common thing if you are right-handed. If you're left-handed, you're going to have the opposite problem. So I will select the entire thing, go to Edit, Transform, Skew, and then drag it back into place. This is one of the perks of working digitally. So now that I don't have the Leaning Palace of Pisa, I'm going to dive into the gardens, drawing reference from a couple different images. If you are English or a world traveler, maybe you recognize the image on the bottom left. That's Hampton Court's Royal Gardens, which I would love to visit someday. I was actually supposed to see them last year, but my trip got canceled because of COVID, unfortunately. So hopefully one day. I just really want to emphasize that these are palatial gardens. Lots of landscaping involved, not overly natural. And I'll do that with curved paths that kind of wrap around the castle in almost a clover shape, a bit of a grid pattern in the front. And again, as they get closer to us, we'll kind of be looking down more on them, and the further away they get, everything kind of starts to flatten out. We've got some fountains going on, tiny little gazebo. There's a lot more I can add later on. In Wade's book, there's this massive kind of wall-like building structure surrounding the entire grounds called the Verdict Ring, and I don't want to go into too much detail with it, but I will allude to it off in the distance. So here I have a super rough outline for everything. It's all working together, and I'm pretty happy with it. So what I do next is create another layer and reduce the opacity on all of this down to about, 30%. Now at this point, I could actually jump right into the piece and begin painting, adding value, color, all that good stuff. But for my pieces, I like to do a more finished line work before I do all that. I grew up reading David Macaulay's illustrative architectural books, and it was a big inspiration to me as a kid, and it's something that carried over into my work. So it's something I try and emulate, and that's kind of how you find your own style as an artist. You borrow from people you admire and sort of figure out what works for you. So yeah, I'm going to speed up the rest of the video till we reach the finish line of this drawing. Relax and zone out for a bit, or feel free to skip ahead a couple minutes if you just want to see the finished product. Okay, so here I have a nice little line drawing. I'm happy with it, and it gives me a much better idea of what these shapes and forms are going to be going into the painting process. Again, it's not a necessary step, but it's one I do enjoy. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you picked up a thing or two. I'm going to be starting the painting process for this in a part 2 video, which will hopefully be out soon. I say hopefully because I'm not the fastest. Usually it takes me about a month or two to actually finish something completely, but I look forward to sharing with you my process for adding value, color, and detail to a painting. Because honestly, I haven't done much art the past 2 years. It's kind of something I did a lot. I mean, I went to art school for it, but it didn't end up being a career for me. And while I'm at peace with that and really enjoy it on a more of a hobbyist personal level, it's something that, I do have a lot of knowledge about, and I'm excited to share more of that with you. If you'd like to show your support, I also have a Patreon, and there's a link to that in the description below, where you can also find a synopsis of this book by the author Wade Llewellyn himself, as well as a link to where you can check out some of his books. So until next time, keep learning, keep dreaming, and always remember to stay creative.